So today we're going to focus very much on your irons, and I'm going to give you 3 simple moves that can absolutely transform your game. So 3 things that you can do which I think are pretty simple, but they can absolutely transform your game. And I've seen this. These are the things that I do with clients week in, week out, and I see the results almost instantly. Now, just before we get into this video, I'd love to know from you, what have you done in your golf game that gave you the biggest kind of jump up in maybe ball striking or success? Was it something, was it a drill, was it an idea? I'd love to get your thoughts on actually what made the biggest difference to your game. So drop down in the comments and let me know. Now, what we're really focusing on here is ball striking and a little bit of club face control, because if we can do those 2 things, if we can strike the ball well and control the club face, that's really the essentials to playing good golf. Now, if you want to kind of go through the whole bag, so wedges right there to drive it, and work on your ball striking, there is a course right now on my website, chrisryanGolf.com, that can help you do that. I will link it up in the corner. I will also link it in the description box down below. That is a 4-part training series, over 60 minutes of content that I absolutely guarantee you can transform your ball striking. So what are these 3 simple tips? Well, effectively, if we look at the golf swing from start to finish, so setup, backswing, transition, downswing, impact, follow through. The later into that motion we get, the harder it is to change things. It's much easier to change something at setup than it is to change something at impact, simply because of the speed that's there and the time. So what we're really covering in this video is a setup and a couple of backswing movements, because that's the easiest place to change a golf swing. That's the easiest way to influence what the ball's doing. And when we start to make changes at setup and the backswing, the results often become visible instantly. Working impact, yes, it can help, but sometimes we need to train a little bit more. We need to do lots of drills. We need to start slow and build up. I'm confident that these 3 things can help you straight away. So simple movement number 1, and this one is by far the simplest. Take your address. I've got myself a 6-iron here, but this would, for me, would work with any of the golf clubs that you hit from the ground. So that goes right the way through to your rescue clubs or even your fairway woods. Now, what do I see commonly? I see golfers setting up, the trail hand is lower than the lead hand, and that pushes the golfer onto their trail side. Either their hips move back or their upper body moves back, or in some cases both. Now, when I'm coaching my studio, I use body track. Body track allows me to measure how a golfer is distributing their weight. All too often, I see too much weight on this back leg due to the fact that that trail hand is lower. What I'd love you to do is set up and have a tiny bit more weight or pressure on your lead leg. So how do you do that? Well, I'm going to take my address. I'm going to stand up in this position. I'm going to find my very neutral position here. When I stand up dead straight, I'm probably going to have my weight pretty much 50-50. I'm going to place my hands on the golf club in this fashion here, so I'm not trying to reach for the golf club. And I'm then going to tip over to the golf ball. Now, what that should do is that should leave me about 50-50. But I want a little bit more on that lead leg. So what I'm then going to do is I'm going to take my midsection, so that's my kind of thighs, a little bit of my knees and mainly my hips, and I'm going to push those a little bit towards the target. Subtle. It's not a huge movement, but it's enough to just put a little bit more pressure through there. Then, when I leave my club in behind the ball, now I'm in a position, I can certainly feel that, where I've got a little bit more pressure on my lead side. Now, that's fairly simple. You should be able to do that in front of a reflection or mirror, and that's a great place to start. But it does a lot of things. Number 1, it starts to move your whole body a little bit more towards the target. That helps us move our low point target side of the ball. That's absolutely crucial. It also starts to influence your kind of body angles a little bit, which helps us as we look to move the body in the backswing. Again, really, really key if we're looking to control the club consistently. So that little tiny movement, really, really important when you're hitting the golf clubs where the ball rests on the ground, and that is the majority of the clubs in your bag. Don't get stuck with your weight on your trail leg. It's incredibly hard to recover from there. A little bit more weight on the lead side, really going to help you. That's the best way to feel it. Stand up here, drop down, and then just nudge the hips a little forward. That's our first simple tip. And the second one is controlling or looking at how we control the club face. First one was really looking at how we develop strike. But how do we control that club face? Well, let's look at our impact and our setup and how we need to move between the 2, and then we're going to go through how you can influence that very early in the golf swing. When I take my address to this golf ball, depending on where the handle is, so it will vary a little bit, but I'm going to have some amount of cupping or bend in that lead wrist, and you can see that there. When we strike the golf ball, when we're at impact, what we would love to have happen would be have that wrist very flat. So you can see that that cup that I had at setup is almost completely gone. And this is something that we pretty much will see with all the best golfers. There aren't many golfers, if any, who play the game to a high level who've got a cupped wristed impact. It just doesn't happen. The reason for that, it's incredibly difficult to strike the ball well, hit the ball good distances from that position. So if we kind of assume or accept that all golfers have some amount of cup here, and at impact they start to have a flat wrist, makes sense that we need to transition between the two. So how do we do that? Well, if you think about what we said at the start of the video, we said that the earlier we can make a change in the golf swing, the simpler it is. So we're going to make this change really, really early. My focus here is from address. We have got some cup in that wrist. I'm going to focus very much on, in the takeaway, keeping the club face looking towards the golf ball. So let me show you what that will look like. So as I move that club away, I feel as if the club head stays looking towards the golf ball. Now look what's happened. My lead wrist is flat. That club has only moved, let's call that 4.5 feet, but already I've taken my wrist from its cup position to a flat position. Perfect, it's done. I don't have to worry about it. I have to maintain it, but I've done it very, very early. What do we see quite commonly? Well, we see a little bit of cup. We see that club face starting to fan open. We start to see it rolling in this fashion here. So when we get to this part of our golf swing, we've still got that cup in the wrist. Now, as we start to progress through into the top of the backswing, we're starting to get to the part of the golf swing where changes become more difficult. If you're that golfer, you've got to try and change that wrist through the transition or through the downswing. As we said already, it's really quite difficult because you need lots of practice, you need lots of reps, you need loads of golf balls and loads of drills. Let's do it early. So a really simple thought is to keep the club looking at the ball in the takeaway. That flattens the wrist, that controls that club face, it strengthens that club face. And when we strengthen the club face, we get lots of things. We get generally straighter shots. We don't really get those balls going off to the right-hand side. We often have less loft at impact, which gives us a more penetrating ball flight, more distance. And when we have that flat wrist and the handle forwards, we're able to hit the ball much higher in the club face. The performance is much better when we can move that strike a little bit more up the club face. So we start to get more ball speed, we start to get the ball popping off the face, we start to get that compressed feeling that many of you are searching for. So again, really simple. Keep the club face looking at the ball and we start to get lots of good things happening. Final tip. This one, we need a little bit of a reference. So I'm just going to take this alignment stick, I'm going to place it just through my belt loops. And this is really just to give me a reference for my hips and where they are in the golf swing. So as I move that through to there, and I'm going to leave it kind of a long way out on this trail side so you can see this. I'm not going to hit golf balls with this here, but this is hopefully going to be the visual for you. Now, admittedly, this one is starting to get a little bit more complicated, but we've got our good setup, we've got our club face being controlled. We need to make sure that the body's moving quite well. What I want you to focus on is, if we could extend your hips like we've done here, in your backswing, all I want you to focus on is taking this end of the alignment stick, which is referencing my hip, and you're going to move it upwards and backwards. So I'm going to feel like, if I do this quite exaggerated, I'm going to move that alignment stick upwards and backwards. Okay, so you can see that again, it's going upwards and it's going backwards. Upwards and backwards. Okay, what I see would be where it moves across. Okay, so you can see that's a lateral movement. That's not really going to help me as I really want to strike these irons. And we don't see enough upwards. We see this, and we see a slide, and we see the arms going up, and there's not enough movement in this alignment stick. Just watch what happens to my lower body when I make that movement of upwards and back. Suddenly we get really good free rotation. Because I'm focusing on moving the club upwards and back, I get a centered rotation. I don't start to see that sway which plagues so many golfers. So upwards and backwards creates better turn in the lower body. Now, why is that important? I'm going to struggle to get this alignment stick off now. Well, that's important for two reasons. Number one, like we said, it allows us to stay centered. That's really key for ball striking. When we've got that ball on the ground, it's essential. But the other thing it does is, as we start to free that hip turn up, it allows us to create some depth. You see how as I rotate, my arms go a little bit more behind me. And those are really two key elements to hitting these golf clubs well. Being able to hit the ground after the ball, that's essential, and creating enough depth that we can start to deliver the club from the inside. So whilst it's potentially a simple thought, it is going to unlock many good things within that golf swing. Now, like I said, admittedly, that was a little bit more complicated, but it's still something you theoretically can take straight to the golf course because it's a non-technical change. It's a concept, it's a feel, it's an idea that you can have over the golf ball, which does many things for you. And those swing thoughts you can certainly take to the golf course. So a golfer who would really struggle, to strike the ball well, is often going to have a little bit of weight on this trail side. They're often going to have a very cupped wrist in the backswing, and they're going to have very static legs that often sway. If we get these three things all together, you can bet that golfer's going to struggle with all the things that we want: consistency, distance, trajectory, direction. None of those things are going to be particularly easy from there. So 3 really simple tips, I think, that you can do, which can really elevate your ball striking, transform your game, and help you hit much better golf shots, which makes the game a little bit more fun. A little bit of weight on the lead side. Club face is going to be controlled. Hip is going to go back and up. Just a 6-iron, which won't really get it done on this par 5, but nice and straight. Strike was good, flight was good, and hopefully, once I got up there, the distance was pretty good as well. Try those. You need some help with your iron game, try them. I guarantee you're going to see success almost straight away, and you can take those straight to the course if you see that success. It's going to make the game a lot more enjoyable for you. Thanks for watching. Usual stuff is down below. Love you to drop down there, drop me a comment. Like as well if you did like this video, and if you're not a subscriber, I'd love you to be part of the channel. I really believe that these videos can help you play some better golf. We've got a great community here of golfers who are striving to improve, and I really believe these videos can help you do that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again very soon.